Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose. The man who rules the world runs into the irresistible force of a man with nothing to lose in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get the regular and variant editions of John Haynes, the man with nothing to lose on Amazon.com today. Jason Pass, the man accused of allegedly taking the life of a father and son over a noise dispute, was shot and killed by police yesterday.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Calvi. Now on CBS 2 and streaming on CBS News New York, we begin with a deadly end to a 3-day-long manhunt in Brooklyn. Police shot and killed a man they say fatally shot 2 of his neighbors on Sunday. CBS News' John Diaz joins us now live from the scene in Bath Beach, Brooklyn. John.
Yeah, Mary, we want to get you right out here into the action as we zoom down live down Bay 44th Street here and try and show you the car where officials say this suspect was hiding inside. Police say they are still awaiting a search warrant on the vehicle to see if the weapon allegedly used to kill 2 people on Sunday is still inside this vehicle. But we can tell you that police say the gun was not registered to him. Evidence cones are scattered throughout the corner Bay 44th Street and Harway Avenue, with numerous police investigating. The scene much calmer now, moments after police say a wild encounter with a murder suspect ended deadly.
They established dialogue, they spoke for a few minutes, and then at a point, the male who was armed at a knife lunged at one of the officers, causing the officers to fire for their own safety.
Police say the person they shot was 47-year-old Jason Pass, a Brooklyn man who was on the run after allegedly shooting his 2 neighbors dead Sunday. Chief of Patrol John Schell says while a hostage negotiation team was on its way, officers on scene tried to talk to Pass for 15 minutes before he says they were forced to shoot him 4 times.
He basically was saying what's happening today is not going to end well.
Police say they used a license plate reader to find out where Pass was and found him in his black Honda CR-V.
They captured a plate on a black car indicating that the car, and we now know the occupant of that car, were wanted for a double horrific homicide. As they exited their police car, they walked up to the car. The male jumped out of the car with a knife in his hand and took off running.
Police allege Pass killed his upstairs neighbor, 47-year-old Vladimir Mathurin, and his 27-year-old stepson, Shinwa Mode, after having ongoing noise disputes. The incident happening 5 miles away inside their East Flatbush apartment building. So neighbors in Bath Beach are shocked it escalated to their neighborhood.
To know that this took place right on the corner of my house at the time where our children are going to school makes us feel very uneasy.
Now a live look back out here at the scene. It is still unclear why Pass was hiding out in this section of Brooklyn. If he knew someone in the area possibly, or if he was hiding in this car this entire time. Those are questions that we asked police during those press conferences. However, they tell us that this is all part of their ongoing investigation. So keep it here with us. We'll continue to keep you updated. But for now, we are live this afternoon from Bath Beach, Brooklyn. John Diaz, CBS 2 News.
John, thank you.
Now, after Jason Pass allegedly shot and killed his neighbor Vladimir Mathurin and his stepson Chinwai Mode, and the murders were caught on video, Jason Pass went on the run in his black Honda CR-V driving the streets of New York City. And as he was driving the streets of New York City, he drove into a Brooklyn neighborhood where police scanned his license plate and identified his vehicle. And after they identified his vehicle, police officers went to confront Jason Pass. And as they were confronting Jason Pass, he brandished a knife and went to go and confront the police with this weapon. Now, as he was confronting the police with this weapon, they tried to negotiate with him for 15 minutes, trying to get him to surrender, and hoped to buy some time for a negotiating team from hostage negotiations to be able to get to the scene. Unfortunately, Jason Pass was just so caught up in his emotions that he acted impulsively by charging at the officers with that knife that he was brandishing, and the officers wound up shooting and killing Jason Pass on the scene where they confronted him in Brooklyn. Now, the NYPD sees this as a tragic end to an incident that escalated out of a dispute over noise. But when I take a critical examination of the actions that Jason Pass allegedly participated in that led to his demise, they are the tragic and sad end of a beta male, like I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And it's clear to me that Jason Pass basically wound up on this road to his demise due to his impulsive behavior that he took place on Sunday night when he got upset about the noise that was going on in the apartment of Vladimir Matharin and his family. And because Jason Pass was not a critical thinker, what he did was act impulsively by rushing up the stairs to confront his upstairs neighbor, Vladimir Matharin. And as they were arguing over the noise, first he was arguing with Vladimir Matharin's wife. Then he argued with Vladimir Matharin, who escalated the situation by taking out a pair of scissors and confronting Jason Pass with the scissors. This is where Jason Pass felt angry about this escalation of violence. And as he escalated this violence, the first person to suffer as a result of it was his stepson Chinwai Mode, who was shot and killed first. Then, as Vladimir Matharin was seeing what happened to his stepson, he tried to retreat, and as he tried to retreat, he was the second person to be shot and killed, while his wife basically closed the door of the apartment to prevent herself from being murdered in this rampage that Jason Pass participated in. Now, after Jason Pass wound up participating in this pair of murders of the father and stepson, what happened was he started to realize that he had basically made a major mistake as related to his life that he could not undo. And this is why he wound up going on the run, because he realized that the police were eventually going to find him and arrest him for the two murders he participated in. And that's why he basically was wandering the streets of New York City, not really knowing where to go, because oftentimes, when beta males act impulsively and participate in violence, what happens to a beta male is that they never really think critically about the consequences of their actions until they go out here and do commit the crime that winds up taking a life. So many of these males, they're so caught up in sating their feelings about whatever is bothering them. And because they're so caught up in sating their feelings about what's bothering them, they never think critically about the long-term consequences of their actions. And that leads to them winding up in situations where they wind up feeling good for a moment. And as they feel good for just a moment, they never think about what's going to come out of the aftermath of that situation. And in the case of Jason Pass, yes, he was angry about the noise that his neighbor was making, and he was very frustrated and angry and reached the boiling point as related to the situation with the noise. And he wanted to go out here and settle things once and for all, acting on his impulses by carrying a loaded firearm with him to settle things once and for all. But as he looked to settle things once and for all with his neighbor, he wasn't thinking about the consequences of his actions on his life long term. Now, that only came after he wound up murdering his two neighbors, father and son, and that's where he started to realize that he basically wound up ruining his entire life by going out here and taking the lives of the father and the son, because now he would go from being a free man to winding up becoming a man in crisis, because now he would not go from being a free man to becoming an inmate in the New York State penal system. Because Jason Pass realized that he was going to be in prison for the rest of his life for these two murders, and he realized that this would be the consequence of his actions. So he was thinking of a way to try to find a way out of this situation, and he realized that he possibly had no way out of the situation. So that's why he was just wandering around, just driving around without any plan, because he understood that he had basically fucked up his entire life, and he was sitting there wondering what to do next. Because again, this is what beta males do. They'll do the deed of violence, but then wonder what they're going to do next because they never thought critically about what they were going to do. And this is why he was just driving around the streets of Brooklyn. And eventually what happened was law enforcement was able to identify his vehicle. And as they identified his vehicle, they wound up confronting Jason Pass. And as they confronted Jason Pass, he realized that he had nothing to lose at this point. And this is why he went out of his vehicle with that knife. He went out of the vehicle with that knife because he did not want to go out here and get arrested, and he did not want to be held accountable for those crimes. So because he didn't want to be held accountable for those crimes, this is why he confronted the police with a knife, because he understood that if he were arrested, what would happen is the police were going to not only arrest him, but he was going to wind up going to jail. And if he was convicted, he was definitely going to prison. And as a former prison guard in Sing Sing prison, he knew that his fate would be in being in the penitentiary with inmates he once guarded, like Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles. And he would be dealing with Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles inside of the penitentiary's social hierarchy, and they would possibly wind up humiliating him as a former guard, by trading him for Little Debbie snack cakes, ramen noodles, packets of Crystal Light lemonade, packets of Crystal Light tea, Taster's Choice coffee, off-brand lemon cookies, off-brand Oreo cookies, off-brand duplex cookies, snack pack puddings, peppermint balls, Kit Kat candy bars, Fritos chips, and packets of soy sauce. And he knew that this was a horrible fate to happen to a man who used to work in the New York penal system. And because he didn't want to be spit roasted by Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles, and have Mr. Sprinkles spray the special sauce all over his face, he decided it would be better to go out by being killed by the police rather than be humiliated in prison. And this is the reason why I believe he possibly committed suicide by cop, because he didn't want to wind up going to prison for the rest of his life and have his life go out in an ignominious end. So he chose to go out in a blaze of glory by going out here and confronting the police with that knife, because he felt like he had nothing to lose, because he didn't want to wind up losing his freedom. So he wound up looking to lose his life instead. And this is the kind of fate that winds up with beta males wind up having, because many beta males do not understand how to think critically. And because most beta males do not understand how to think critically, they act on their feelings impulsively, not thinking about the long-term consequences of their actions and the ramification of their actions on them. And they don't really, because they don't think critically, they wind up making impulsive decisions that wind up destroying their chances of their lives later on. And what happened here with Jason Pass is because he was not a critical thinker. What happened to him is he wound up losing the intangibles of his freedom and his life, all because he was all caught up in sating his feelings of anger about the noise that was made by his neighbor Vladimir Matharn and his family, when a more constructive solution for him would have been to just end the lease on that apartment and just move to another apartment in Brooklyn or some other part of New York. That would have been a more constructive solution for Jason Pass that would have allowed him to maintain his freedom, because if life in New York City was getting to be too much for him as related to the noise, then he should have come up with a plan to go out here and find a way to get the money to move out of New York City and move to a place where he could go out here and be able to be in a place where he could enjoy a covenant of enjoyment of his apartment without the noise of New York City. Now, I myself have been in a situation like Jason Pass has been with a neighbor back from 2007 to 2011, where this savage would go out here and play this stereo super loud, and it was just really frustrating to deal with this individual. So I can understand Jason Pass's anger at this individual, at this family, for making all that noise. If that was the case, I could understand why he was frustrated. But in these cases, there's only one way out of the situation. If the management won't work with you towards dealing with the situation, like offering you another apartment, or offering you a way to mitigate the situation, like offering to give you free soundproofing, something that would allow you to be able to not deal with the stress. That if they're not going to offer you any solutions, then you need to alleviate the problem by just leaving that location, because it's better for your mental health than dealing with a savage who just does not understand that you cannot go out here making noise like that in New York City. Now, there's another argument that says the kids were just walking up and down, and that's part of normal life. And again, the management there could easily have alleviated the situation by carpeting the apartment, or you could have had Vladimir Matharin. He was working to pay for his kids to go to private school. He could also have put some carpet down. That could have alleviated the situation, but because neither of these men were critical thinkers or thought about cause and effect, they wound up allowing the situation to escalate because they didn't want to problem solve, because these men were caught up in their pride. And now, because these men were so caught up in their pride, we have 3 men who are dead, and we have a family that is now being led by a single mother who will possibly have to go out here and work twice as many jobs, because the men in that family could not go out here and conflict resolve like a man, because they're too proud to admit when they are wrong, or too proud to admit that, hey, I'm doing something that's hurting my neighbor. I need to respect my neighbor. That is what a man does. Unfortunately, when you have beta males don't understand how to use logic and reason, don't know how to, again, critically think. And because they feel and they get caught up in their feelings of pride and hubris, what they do is escalate minor situations into major conflicts. And as they escalate minor situations into major conflicts, they wind up alienating people with their dysfunctional behavior. And as they alienate people with their dysfunctional behavior, things escalate into violence. And they escalate into violence because these men live in a rose-colored reality where they don't want to consider the feelings of others or consider the others around them. And because they live in that rose-colored reality and don't want to consider other people, they wind up creating a situation where they wind up creating a conflict that doesn't need to be there. And it's all because these men were not raised to understand how to, again, think critically or problem solve or conflict resolve. And these are the type of life skills that a boy and a girl get from their father. But when a boy and a girl don't get these life skills from their fathers, what happens is they go from being boys and girls who grow up to become men and women in crisis. And they create situations like this where nobody really benefits at the end. And instead of there being men in the community, you have 3 dead males, and you have 3 dead males because all 3 of these males grew up to become men in crisis. Now, if you want to learn more about the dysfunctional behaviors that lead to beta males escalating situations into violence like this, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com. in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Smashware's The iBookstore, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble. And if you'd like to see me make more videos about men in crisis, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s in this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Get your copy of John Haynes 1987 in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.